All right, episode 2. Let's do this. Welcome back, guys. I tried filming this vlog yesterday, but there was no chance in hell I was going to get it done. We've had the most atrocious weather in Bali, like flooding, heavy rain. I honestly thought these doors were going to fly off the rails yesterday. Like there was water coming through. It was just disastrous. We couldn't even leave the villa yesterday. They put out extreme weather warnings. We're like, stay inside if you can. So we did exactly that. But much nicer day today. I can finally get this video done for you. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about what I personally think is the one thing that holds a lot of women back on their weight loss journey. And I know this is probably going to sound really rough, but I cannot fucking stand people with this particular mindset that I'm going to be talking about. Anytime I hear it, I just, I cringe and my whole body aches because I just cannot stand it. And I feel like I can say this because for so many years, for a really long time, I was this person. I was stuck in this particular mindset. And if I hadn't have escaped the way that I used to be, there is absolutely no way in hell that I would be sitting in this position that I'm in today. And over the course of my coaching career so far, I've come across a lot of women who believe that they can't lose weight because of their metabolism, their age, their hormones, hardship that they've been through life, but it's really got nothing to do with that. So today's episode is going to be all about a victim mindset and just not taking ownership and responsibility of your own life. And I feel like I just cannot stress this enough. You will never be successful with weight loss and keeping it off unless you can get out of this mindset. Fuck the food, fuck the training, the steps, whatever else is associated with weight loss. None of that fucking shit matters until you can snap out of this mindset. I'm going to help you do that exact thing today. Now you can probably tell, like, just from the way that I'm talking and the tone of my voice and using my hands, I'm really passionate about this topic because I know the importance of it. I know that unless you can break this mindset, you're never going to get fucking anywhere with your health and your fitness. And from having this business for quite some time now and working with hundreds of women, the women that come into the program and get the best fucking results, the ones that not just change their bodies but completely transform the way that they live, they are the ones that put time and effort into changing their mindsets and start taking responsibility for their own lives. And once they start doing that, that's when the magic happens. And I know this mindset all too well because I was stuck in it for many, 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 many years. I was that person, and we all know people like this because there's too many of them out there that are stuck in this mindset. But I would be that person who could just never take responsibility and accountability for anything. I had to always blame something or someone for my circumstance. You know, I would say, oh, well, I've had a tough upbringing. I've had to do it really hard, or it's my genetics. And I would just give up on everything so easily. I was a massive quitter. And if something didn't work, I just always had a reason as to why that happened. And it was never my fault. And if I didn't get myself out of this mindset, there is no fucking way that I'd be sitting here right now doing what I'm doing. I'd probably still be in my old retail job, hating life, blaming the world that this is where I ended up. Now, enough about me. Let's dive head into this topic. So first of all, we need to talk about what does a victim mindset actually look like? How do you know if you got one or not? This is how I like to think about it. Someone who has a victim mindset likes to outsource responsibility. They're always focusing on the things that they can't control and they're ignoring the things that they can. And I want to dive into that in a little more depth later on. But you know, someone with a victim mindset, that doesn't necessarily mean they go and sit in the corner and cry and rock themselves. Maybe some people do that, but it's a lot more subtle than that. I feel like sometimes it can be a bit hard to recognize because it's so socially accepted. And I fucking hate that. I feel like more often than not, people who have a victim mindset are getting validated by other people around them. You know, because it is easier to just turn around and go, oh, there's people in my villa. Hello. Hi. Yes, that's fine. You can come in.
I will check the shower.
Yes, just in here. Yeah, yep.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? You're on my YouTube channel.
You?
I am, but that's okay. You can fix it. No, that's all good. Sorry guys for the little disturbance. There's always something that needs fixing in this villa every single day. Like, it looks beautiful, but when you look at it closely, there's always something wrong. But anyway, back to it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, like, I think it's easy for people to just turn around to someone and go, oh, you know, it is what it is, rather than say, well, you know, what are you doing about it? And when everyone around you validates your excuses, you don't really have like any pressure to change. And I feel like that is a big reason as to why so many people don't change, because there is no pressure. Just need to put a bit of gloss on. My lips are getting dry. Anyway, next part I want to talk about is how your victim mindset can show up in life, because it doesn't just show up in health and fitness. I feel like it does show up a lot there for most women, but it shows up in literally every aspect of your life. And I've written just a few things I've heard over my years that are very common. My metabolism is slow. It's my hormones. I'm too busy. I've tried everything, and nothing works for me. See how every single one of those statements I've written down does not involve any sort of action. They don't involve any sort of responsibility, no accountability, and that is why women stay stuck for so long. Like, think about it. It's so much easier to put the blame on your metabolism or your hormones or your kids or whatever it is than to just admit that you're being a bit shit. You're being a little bit of a lazy fuck. A few workplace examples that I've heard, like, oh, my boss doesn't value what I do, or I'm constantly drowning in work, or, you know, I never get the opportunities like anyone else. And like, okay, those things might be true, right? But like, what are you doing about it? Are you taking the time to upskill and get better at your job? Are you communicating properly with your boss and letting them know how you feel? Are you setting boundaries? Like, are you saying, I'm not taking my laptop home, I'm leaving it at work, because if I take it home, I end up, on it until midnight. So are you actively trying to help your situation, or are you just staying stuck and whinging and whining about it? And a big one is relationships. I've worked with a lot of women who love to put the blame on their hubbies for the position that they're in. And they'll say things like, oh, but that's just the way he is. And, that's just the way that I act when I'm around him. And, I'm not sitting here dismissing that relationships aren't hard. They fucking are. But what you need to understand is that there's a really big difference between something happening to you versus you choosing to stay stuck in a position and not do anything differently about it. And again, like, I'm not saying that there aren't hard things that come with being in a relationship. Being treated poorly is absolutely real. Not having support from your partner is absolutely real. But staying in the same dynamic year after year, not setting boundaries for yourself, not having those hard conversations, putting up with the same shit without making decisions to change, then that becomes a choice. You're choosing to not change a situation. And I guess this leads me really nicely into the next part I sort of want to talk about with this victim mindset, because there is a difference between something happening to you versus you choosing to stay there. And I don't want you guys to think that I'm like disregarding that hard things happen in life. Like, they fucking do. And I know there are a lot of people out there that have gone through way harder shit than I have ever have in my life. Pain is fucking real. Circumstances are real. But at the end of the day, you still have a choice. You do, even if you don't feel like it. You didn't choose to be cheated on. You didn't choose to go through trauma. You didn't choose to have a really tough upbringing. You didn't choose to go through menopause. But when something happens, like, your brain naturally starts to create a bit of a story. For example, I'm not losing weight because of my metabolism. Or I don't trust men because of my past relationships. Or, I'm really bad with my finances because I grew up with no money. And okay, where those stories have come from, may be true, but over time, those stories that you're telling yourself, they start to become what I like to call your identity. And when we have this identity of ourselves, that influences our choices and our actions. That's going to influence things like whether you try, whether you show up, whether you take risks. And essentially, like, those actions are going to determine your future. And the people that stay stuck in life, they are the ones who are obsessed with fault and living in the past. You know, they're always focusing on like, oh, well, who did this? Who caused that? Blaming everyone and everything else around them. But the people who go on to do really fucking cool and incredible things with their life, they take responsibility and they focus on the future. They're more present. They go, all right, so this shit thing's just happened to me. It is what it is. But like, what am I gonna do about it? What's my next step gonna be? Anyway, I'm gonna grab my camera off here in a second. I'm gonna point it down to my notepad. I'm gonna do a bit of a drawing for you guys to just make this all make more sense. All right, now got myself all set up. First of all, please do not judge my drawing or my handwriting, but I wanna make this super simple. So basically in life, we have 3 circles. Oh, it's a very ugly looking circle, Taylor, but it's gonna do. So 3 circles, okay? The biggest one we call our circle of concern. The one in the middle we call our circle of influence. So it's really hard to try and spell and talk at the same time. I'm like, am I spelling that right? And then the final one is our circle of control. So our circle of concern are things that are completely out of your control. Things like traffic, have no control over that. The weather, politics, and everyone loves talking about politics. Your genetics, another one, death, the headlines, news. All right, so you get the gist. All the things that you have no control over at the end of the day. Our next circle that we have is our circle of influence. Now, these are things, you can influence them to a degree, but you still don't have full control over them. Things like your partner's behavior, your kids' actions, other people's thoughts, shit that happens in your workplace. So you get what I'm saying, right? You know, you have an influence over these things, but you do not have the final say. You still don't have full control over these outcomes. Then we have the smallest circle. Yes, it may be the smallest, but it is the most powerful. So your circle of control are what you eat, whether you exercise, your standards, how you respond, your mindset, your actions and choices. So people that live with this victim mindset, they spend most of their time focusing on this stuff and this stuff. They take very little ownership over the circle that matters most. Look, you may not be genetically gifted and have the world's greatest physique. However, what you eat is still in your control. How you choose to exercise is still in your control. Asking for help is still in your control. Tracking accurately is still in your control. And it's just wild to me, you know, so many people spend their time and energy focusing on these 2 massive circles, but like at the end of the day, they have no control over these things. So why waste your energy worrying about it? You know, life's gonna suck sometimes. You're gonna get stuck in traffic. You're gonna be caught in shit weather. You're gonna go through a death or a divorce. Your kids are gonna be shit. Your husband's gonna be an asshole. But at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to let it define you or develop you. Sorry, a little gloss break. That's better. Anyway, the next part I wanted to talk to you guys about is why do people stay stuck in this victim mindset? And I honestly put it down to that it's just comfortable. It's familiar. It protects you. It protects your ego. You know, it's so much easier to say it's your hormones and blame that than it is to admit that you've been shit and inconsistent. You know, if you blame your upbringing and the hardship that you've been through, it's so much easier to do that than to admit that you have some uncomfortable work to do to get to a better position. You know, if it's your husband or your partner, again, so easy to just blame them than to actually sit down with them and have an honest, hard conversation. There's a bit of, you know, relief in doing that. And how I like to look at it is, you know, a victim mindset, it reduces pressure, but once you start taking responsibility and accountability, that actually increases pressure. The second you start taking ownership and responsibility for your own life, that takes away the blame of everyone else. It's all on you. And the deeper thing I think a lot of people don't want to face or admit is like, say you actually try, you put in the effort, you try really, really hard, and it still doesn't work out. That's scary. So it's almost safer to just, half-ass it, to half try. It feels so much safer for a lot of people to just say, oh, I can't, rather than to say, I put in the effort, I really fucking tried, I gave it my all, but it still didn't work out. That is the real fear. It's that fear of failing. But that fear of failing is the thing that is really keeping you stuck in this uncomfortable position that you don't want to be in. That level of comfort that protects you is also the one thing that is holding you back. So you need to just embrace discomfort and tackle this shit head on. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap this up because my camera's flashing at me telling me it's almost about to die. So, you can't control that you're about to go into menopause. You can't control that you're 35, 45, 55. You can't control that your life's busy and really chaotic, but you do have control over your standards. You can control whether you go to the gym or not. You can control whether you go get your steps in, what you eat, who you associate yourself with. You can control whether you reach out and ask for help with things that you just don't really have any idea about. And from my experience in this program, the women who get the best results aren't the ones with perfect lives, with no chaos and no interruptions. They're just the ones that decide that they're fucking done with the excuses. They take ownership. They stop blaming everything and everyone. They understand that they are the one who's in control of their results. And, take all this from someone who was the biggest victim ever. All right. There's a lot of work to be done in order to get rid of this mindset, but it can be done. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take practice. You're going to find yourself sometimes slipping back into old ways, but you do have a choice in what your life looks like. You just have to take ownership of it. Anyway, guys, that is it from me. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. If you want, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more videos. I'm going to be dropping another video at the end of this week. We're doing something really, really exciting. I'm not going to give it away yet, so you'll have to stay tuned for that next video. Anyway, if you want to learn a little bit more about the program and how we help our ladies get out of this victim mindset so they can finally start seeing results and live the life that they really want to live, feel free to hit the link below and book in a call. Have a chat with us, see if it's the right fit for you. If it is, fantastic. Maybe we can work together, but if not, that is all good as well. Anyway, guys, have a wonderful day and I'll see you in the next episode.